The Galactic Academy of Sciences had stood for 11,000 cycles. It was the oldest and most respected institution in the known universe. Its archives held the biological signatures of every sentient species across 9 spiral arms of the galaxy. No one questioned its accuracy. No one doubted its systems. The archive was perfect, and it had been perfect since the day it was built. Archivist Kelleth worked in the deep levels of the Academy, where few others ever visited. She was a Varn, a species known for their silver-scaled skin and their 4 calculating eyes that could process information faster than most computers. She had spent 300 cycles in her position, and she had never seen anything that surprised her until tonight. The notification appeared on her console at the 3rd hour of the night cycle. Red light pulsed across her workstation, and a message filled her screen. She read it 3 times before she believed what she was seeing. Unauthorized human pattern logged. Location: Restricted Sector Omega-7. Kelleth ran the diagnostic program. She checked the sensors. She verified the timestamp. Everything came back the same. A human biosignature had been detected inside the most secure research vault in the entire Academy. This should not have been possible. Restricted Sector Omega-7 was sealed by gravitational locks. Opening it required biometric clearances from 6 different species, none of which were human. The chamber was protected by autonomous defense systems that could identify and eliminate any unauthorized life form within milliseconds. Nothing could enter that vault without permission. Nothing. Yet according to the archive, a human had walked in, stayed for 4 standard hours, and walked out again. No alarms had triggered. No defenses had activated. The human had simply come and gone like a ghost. Kelleth pulled up the complete record. The biosignature was definitely human. The pattern matched the genetic markers that the archive used to identify the species. But when she tried to match it against the registry of humans at the Academy, she found nothing. The pattern belonged to no one on file. She sat back in her chair and felt something she had not felt in a very long time. She felt confused. There were 43 humans currently living at the Academy. They were a young species, barely 3 generations into contact with galactic civilization. Most of them worked in low-level positions. Some assisted with research. Others handled translation and cultural exchange. None of them had access to restricted areas. None of them should have been anywhere near Omega-7. Kelleth flagged the report and sent it to Director Realm. He was the head of the Academy, a synthery whose crystalline body had existed for 4,000 cycles. He did not tolerate mysteries, and he did not accept excuses. If anyone could explain this impossible event, it would be him. Within the hour, Kelleth received a summons to his chamber. She found Director Realm standing before a massive window that looked out over the Academy's central garden. His body hummed with energy, and his crystalline surface shifted through shades of amber and gold. When he spoke, his voice resonated through the room like a bell. "You are certain this is not a system malfunction?" Kelleth bowed her head. "The archive does not malfunction, Director. It has not produced a false reading in 7,000 cycles. I have verified the data myself. The detection is accurate." Valem turned to face her. His surface darkened to a deep purple, a sign of deep concern among his kind. "Then explain to me how a human entered a vault that no human can access." "I cannot explain it, Director. That is why I brought it to you." He was silent for a long moment. Then he moved toward his communication console and pressed a series of commands. "Summon the human delegation's representative. Tell him to come immediately. And tell no one else about this matter." The representative arrived within the hour. His name was Daniel Porter, and he was 28 years old. He had been at the Academy for 3 cycles, serving as a cultural liaison between the human population and the Galactic administration. He was young by any species standards. and he looked nervous as he entered the director's chamber. Keleth watched him carefully. Humans were difficult to read. Their faces moved in strange ways, and their emotions seemed to shift without warning. But this one appeared genuinely uncertain about why he had been summoned. Director Vilum wasted no time. "There has been a security breach, Mr. Porter. Last night, a human biosignature was detected inside restricted sector Omega-7. You will explain to me who this individual is and how they accomplished this intrusion." Daniel's face showed surprise. His eyebrows rose, and his mouth opened slightly before he spoke. "Director, that is impossible. No human at the Academy has access to that sector. I'm not even sure most of us know it exists. The archive does not make mistakes, Mr. Porter. I am not saying it does, sir. I am saying I do not understand how this could happen." Daniel paused and seemed to think carefully about his next words. "There are only 43 humans here. I know all of them personally. None of them would attempt something like this. None of them could." Keleth decided to speak. "The biosignature does not match any registered human at the Academy. We have checked every record." Daniel turned to her with even greater confusion on his face. "Then who was it?" "That is what we are asking you," Vilum said. The human shook his head slowly. "I have no answer for you, Director, but I will investigate. I will speak with every human here and verify their whereabouts last night. If someone is responsible for this, I will find them." Vilum studied him for a long moment. Keleth could see the director's crystalline surface shifting through various colors as he processed the situation. Finally, he nodded. "You have 2 cycles, Mr. Porter. Report your findings to Archivist Keleth. She will be conducting her own investigation into this matter." Daniel bowed his head respectfully and left the chamber. When the door closed behind him, Vilum turned to Keleth. "I want you to review every record of human activity since their species arrived at this Academy. Every movement, every access request, every anomaly, no matter how small. Something is happening here that we do not understand, and I will not rest until we have answers." Keleth bowed and returned to her station. She began her work immediately, pulling files and running searches and compiling data. She expected to find nothing unusual. She expected the investigation to reveal a simple explanation. Perhaps a sensor glitch or a data corruption that had somehow escaped the diagnostic programs thought she was wrong. What she found in those records would change everything the galactic community believed about humanity. It would challenge the very foundations of their understanding of consciousness and reality. And it would begin with a simple truth that no one had ever considered. Humans were not what they appeared to be. Keleth spent the next 3 cycles buried in data. Her 4 eyes moved across thousands of records while her processors worked to find patterns in the information. She had expected to find nothing. She had expected the investigation to end quickly with some simple explanation. Instead, she found something that made her scales turn cold. The incident in Omega-7 was not the first of its kind. Over the past 15 cycles, the archive had logged 17 similar events involving human biosignatures. Each time, a human pattern had been detected in a location where no human should have been. Each time, the system had automatically marked the detection as a probable error and filed it away without review. Keleth pulled up each incident and studied them one by one. A human detected in a sealed genetics laboratory during the night cycle when no one was present. A human pattern found in a storage chamber that had been locked for 200 cycles. A human biosignature recorded in a corridor moving at speeds that exceeded what their species could physically achieve. None of these patterns matched the 43 registered humans at the Academy. They were definitely human according to every marker the archive used for identification. But they belonged to no one. Keleth felt something close to fear building in her chest. The archive had been designed by the greatest minds in galactic history. It did not make mistakes. If it said humans had been in these places, then humans had been in these places. But how and who? Meanwhile, Daniel Porter was conducting his own investigation. He met with every human at the Academy over the course of 2 cycles. He verified their locations on the night of the Omega-7 incident. He checked security footage and access logs and personal schedules. Every single one of the 43 humans could prove where they had been. None of them had been anywhere near the restricted sector. But during his interviews, Daniel noticed something strange. Several humans mentioned that they had been having unusual dreams recently. Vivid dreams that felt more real than any dream they had experienced before. Dreams that stayed with them long after they woke up. One researcher, a woman named Katie Morrison, described her experience in detail. She was 32 years old and worked in the botanical division studying plant life from different worlds. She seemed embarrassed to talk about her dream, but Daniel encouraged her to continue. It felt so real, she said. I was walking through these corridors that I had never seen before. Everything was made of crystal, and there were lights pulsing everywhere. I knew I was not supposed to be there. I could feel it, but I also knew that I needed to see something. Something important. Daniel listened carefully. Something about her description felt familiar. Can you remember any other details? He asked. Katie closed her eyes and thought. There were these tall structures in the room, like pillars, but they were alive somehow. They were humming with energy. And in the center of the room, there was a platform with something floating above it. I could not see what it was clearly, but it felt powerful. Daniel thanked her and moved on to his next interview. But later that night, he went to the Academy library and searched through the declassified files about restricted sectors. When he found the description of Omega-7, his hands began to shake. Katie had described the synthesis vault perfectly. Every detail matched. The crystalline corridors, the pulsing lights, the tall energy pillars, the floating platform at the center. She had described a place she had never seen, a place she could not possibly know about. Daniel brought his findings to Kelleth the next morning. She listened without interrupting, her 4 eyes fixed on him as he spoke. When he finished, she was silent for a long moment. Dreams are neurological processes, she said finally. They are random electrical signals in the brain. They cannot explain physical biosignature detection. I know that, Daniel replied. But how do you explain what Katie described? She gave exact details about a vault she has never visited. Details that are not available to the public. How could she know those things? Kelleth had no answer. She turned to her console and pulled up the security footage from Omega-7 on the night of the incident. The recording showed an empty corridor for the entire night cycle. No movement, no shadows, nothing. But when she overlaid the biosignature data onto the footage, they could both see it. A human pattern moving through the space, walking down the corridor and entering the vault. The sensors had detected someone there. The cameras had recorded nothing. This is not possible, Kelleth said quietly. I am starting to think we need to change what we consider possible. Daniel replied. They spent the rest of the day reviewing the other 17 incidents. In each case, the biosignature data showed humans in places where the cameras saw nothing. Humans walking through walls. Humans appearing and disappearing without using any doors or access points. Humans existing in 2 locations at the same time. The pattern was clear. Even if the explanation was not. Daniel began to form a theory. Humans had always experienced things that other species dismissed as superstition or fantasy. Near-death experiences where people floated above their own bodies. The feeling of déjà vu, like you had lived a moment before. The sensation of being watched when you were alone in a room. Scientists had always, explained these experiences as glitches in the brain, misfiring neurons, tricks of perception. Nothing real. But what if they had been wrong? What if these experiences were glimpses of something that actually existed? Something that humans could access but had never truly understood. Daniel needed more information. He needed to speak with someone who had been studying these questions for a long time. Someone who might have answers that the rest of the scientific community had ignored. He needed to find Dr. Nathan Clark. Nathan was the oldest human at the Academy. He was 63 years old and had been one of the first humans to make contact with galactic civilization 30 years ago. He had spent his entire career studying physics and dimensional theory, and he had published papers that most scientists refused to take seriously. Papers about consciousness. Papers about the nature of reality. Papers about abilities that humans might possess, but had never developed. Daniel found Nathan's office in the far corner of the Academy, a small room filled with stacks of data crystals and handwritten notes. The old man looked up when Daniel entered, and something in his eyes suggested that he had been expecting this visit for a very long time. "You found something, didn't you?" Nathan asked. Daniel nodded. "I found something that nobody can explain." Nathan smiled slowly. "Then sit down, Mr. Porter. I think it is time someone told you the truth about what humans really are." Nathan Clark poured 2 cups of tea from an old metal pot that looked like it had traveled across the galaxy with him. His hands were steady despite his age, and his eyes held a sharpness that suggested his mind was still working perfectly. He handed 1 cup to Daniel and settled into his chair. "So tell me what you found," Nathan said. Daniel explained everything. The impossible detection in Omega-7. The 17 other incidents that Kelef had discovered. The dreams that Katie and other humans had been experiencing. The patterns that made no sense according to everything science understood about reality. Nathan listened without interrupting. When Daniel finished, the old man nodded slowly, as if everything he had heard confirmed something he had suspected for a very long time. "You want to know if humans can project their consciousness into other locations," Nathan said. "The answer is yes. I believe we can." Daniel stared at him. "How can you be so certain?" Nathan stood and walked to a display screen on his wall. He activated it and pulled up a holographic image of the galaxy. Billions of stars sparkled in the darkness, and Daniel could see the familiar spiral arms stretching out in all directions. "Let me show you something," Nathan said. He zoomed in on a particular region of the galaxy and highlighted a small yellow star. "This is Earth's sun, our home system. Now look at where it sits." Daniel leaned forward and studied the image. Earth's position seemed unremarkable at first. Just another star among countless others. "I don't see anything special," he admitted. "That's because you're looking at it the wrong way." Nathan adjusted the display, and suddenly new lines appeared across the image. They were not physical structures, but mathematical representations, glowing threads that wove through space in complex patterns. These are dimensional membranes. Most species can only detect them with the most advanced equipment. But they exist everywhere, layered on top of normal space like sheets of paper stacked together. Daniel followed the lines with his eyes. They crossed and intersected at various points throughout the galaxy. And then he saw it. 3 of the largest membranes converged directly at Earth's location. "Earth sits at an intersection point," Nathan continued. 3 major dimensional membranes meet right where our planet formed. For millions of years, our ancestors were bathed in energy that leaked through from adjacent dimensions. Most species never experienced this kind of exposure. They evolved in stable dimensional spaces. But humans developed differently. "What do you mean differently?" Daniel asked. Nathan returned to his chair and picked up his tea. "Our brains evolved to perceive things that other species cannot see. We developed the ability to sense dimensional boundaries and sometimes even cross them. On Earth, we called it many things: dreams, astral projection, out-of-body experiences. We explained it all away as superstition because we had no framework to understand what was actually happening. And now? Now we are here at the Academy, surrounded by technology that operates on dimensional principles. Faster-than-light travel works by bending dimensional membranes. Communication across galaxies uses dimensional frequency carriers. This entire facility is saturated with dimensional energy. Nathan leaned forward with intensity in his eyes. For humans, being here is like giving a fish a bigger ocean to swim in. Our abilities are amplified. Things that were impossible on Earth become possible here. Daniel thought about Katie Morrison's dream. She had walked through corridors she had never seen and entered a vault she did not know existed. Her consciousness had traveled to a place her body could not go. But how does that explain the biosignatures? Daniel asked. Katie dreamed about Omega-7, but the archive detected an actual physical presence there. Nathan smiled as if Daniel had asked exactly the right question. That is the most important part. In galactic science, consciousness and physical reality are treated as separate things. The mind is over here, and the body is over there, and never shall they meet. But that separation is false. Consciousness and physical existence are connected at the deepest level. When a human projects their awareness into another location, they leave traces behind: biosignatures, energy patterns, evidence that something was there, even if no physical body was present. Kelleth had been listening from the doorway. Daniel had not noticed her arrive, but now she stepped into the room with her scales rippling in patterns that suggested deep unease. If what you say is true, she said, then humans represent a security risk that cannot be calculated. Every restricted area in this academy, every sealed archive, every classified project could be accessed by human consciousness without any physical intrusion. We would have no way to stop it. No way to even detect it until after it happened. Nathan nodded slowly. You could see it that way. Or you could see it another way. What other way? Kelleth demanded. Humans could be the greatest research opportunity in galactic history. Nathan stood and walked to the window of his small office. Outside, the academy stretched across the landscape, its towers and domes housing the collected knowledge of 1,000 species. Your civilization has spent 11,000 cycles trying to understand dimensional mechanics. You build massive ships and enormous stations to breach barriers that my species can simply step through. Not because we are smarter or stronger, but because we are different. Evolution gave us a gift that we never understood. The room fell silent. Daniel looked at Kelleth and saw the conflict in her 4 eyes. She was a scientist. She had dedicated her life to knowledge and truth. But this truth challenged everything her civilization believed about the natural order of the universe. Director Valem will need to hear this, she said finally. Yes, Nathan agreed. But words will not be enough. He will need proof. He will need to see what humans can do with his own eyes. Daniel felt a weight settling onto his shoulders. He understood what Nathan was suggesting. Someone would need to demonstrate this ability under controlled conditions. Someone would need to show the most powerful figures in the academy that humans possessed capabilities they had never imagined. Katie, he said quietly. You want Katie to do this? Nathan turned to face him. She has the strongest natural ability of any human I have observed. Her dreams are not random. They are targeted, focused, purposeful. She can do this, Daniel. But only if she agrees. Daniel nodded and rose from his chair. He had come looking for answers, and he had found them. Now he had to decide what to do with them. he had to convince Katie Morrison to change the galaxy. Katie Morrison stood in her small apartment and stared at Daniel with wide eyes. She had listened to everything he told her about the investigation, about Nathan's theories, and about what they were asking her to do. Now she needed time to process it all. "You want me to do this in front of the entire Academy leadership," she said slowly. "You want me to prove that I can send my mind into a sealed room." "Not the entire leadership," Daniel replied. "But yes, there will be observers. Director Valem insists on proof. Without it, no one will believe what we have discovered." Katie walked to her window and looked out at the alien gardens below. She had come to the Academy 3 years ago hoping to study plant biology from different worlds. She had never expected to become the center of a galactic controversy. "What if I fail?" she asked quietly. "What if I try and nothing happens? They will think we made everything up." Daniel moved to stand beside her. "Nathan believes you can do this. He has studied your dream patterns. He says your ability is stronger than anyone else here. But I will not force you, Katie. This has to be your choice." She was silent for a long moment. Then she turned to face him with determination in her eyes. "I have been having these dreams my entire life. When I was a child, I thought everyone experienced them. I thought it was normal to wake up and remember walking through places I had never been. Then I grew up and learned to keep quiet about it because people thought I was strange." "You are not strange," Daniel said. "You are something we never knew existed." Katie smiled sadly. "Maybe, or maybe I'm just crazy, and this whole thing will prove it." She took a deep breath and straightened her shoulders. "But I will try. I need to know the truth as much as anyone." The demonstration was scheduled for 5 days later. Nathan designed the experiment with help from Kelleth, who contributed her knowledge of the Academy's sensor systems. They chose the primary research amphitheater as the location, because it was large enough to hold the observers and equipped with monitoring equipment that could track every form of energy known to galactic science. On the day of the test, representatives from 12 different species gathered in the amphitheater. They sat in rising tiers around a central platform where Katie would perform her attempt. Many of them looked skeptical. A few looked openly hostile. Humans were supposed to be a primitive species still learning their place in galactic civilization. The idea that they possessed unique abilities seemed absurd to many in the audience. Director Valem stood at the highest tier, his crystalline body glowing with soft amber light. He had not spoken since the proceedings began, but his presence dominated the room. Katie sat in a comfortable chair at the center of the platform. Neural monitors were attached to her temples, and biosignature trackers had been placed on her wrists. Every aspect of her physical and mental state would be recorded during the attempt. On the opposite side of the amphitheater, behind a thick barrier of reinforced material, sat a small sealed chamber. Inside this chamber, researchers had placed a collection of objects that Katie had never seen. She did not know what they were or where they came from. Her task was to project her consciousness into the chamber and describe what she found there. Nathan stood beside her chair and spoke through a communication link that broadcast his voice to the entire amphitheater. "The test is simple. Katie will attempt to perceive the contents of the sealed chamber without physical access. She will describe what she sees, and we will verify her descriptions afterward." A synthery scientist named Orvith spoke from the audience. "This is a waste of time. Humans cannot perceive through solid barriers. No biological species can." "Perhaps," Nathan replied calmly. "That is what we are here to discover." He turned to Katie and placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Take your time. Do not force anything. Just let your awareness drift toward the chamber. You know how to do this. You have been doing it your whole life." Katie closed her eyes. The amphitheater fell silent. For several minutes, nothing happened. Katie sat motionless in her chair while the monitors tracked her vital signs. Her breathing was steady. Her heart rate was normal. There was no indication that anything unusual was occurring. The observers grew restless. Some began whispering to each other. Orvith made a sound that suggested contempt. Then Katie's brainwave patterns changed. The neural monitors showed a sudden shift in activity. Regions of her brain that typically remained dormant during waking consciousness began to light up with intense energy. Her breathing slowed dramatically. Her heart rate dropped to 40 beats per minute, and inside the sealed chamber, a human biosignature appeared. The amphitheater erupted. Scientists jumped from their seats and pushed forward to see the monitors. Some demanded that the experiment be stopped immediately. Others called for more data. Director Valem raised one crystalline limb, and a deep tone resonated through the room. Silence fell instantly. "Continue," he commanded. Katie began to speak in a soft voice. Her eyes remained closed, and her expression was peaceful, like someone describing a pleasant dream. "There is a blue crystal sitting on a small pedestal. It is about the size of my fist. Next to it, there is a stack of data cards. I count 22 of them. Behind those, there is a plant in a ceramic pot. The leaves are red with gold edges. The pot is white, but there is a crack on the left side near the bottom." She continued describing objects for several minutes. A metal tool with 3 prongs. A piece of fabric with geometric patterns. A small container filled with liquid that glowed faintly green. When she finished, Nathan signaled for the chamber to be opened. Researchers rushed forward to document its contents. Every single description matched perfectly. The blue crystal, the 22 data cards, the red-leafed plant in the cracked pot. Everything Katie had said was accurate down to the smallest detail. The amphitheater remained silent for a long moment. Then Orvith spoke again, but this time his voice held none of its earlier contempt. "This changes everything we know about species capabilities. Humans have been assigned to menial positions because we believe them to be limited. But they possess an ability that no other species has ever demonstrated." Talith added her own observation. "Not just an ability. A fundamentally different relationship with reality itself." Director Velm's crystalline body cycled through several colors before settling on deep blue. He looked down at Katie, who had opened her eyes and was blinking in the bright lights of the amphitheater. "It appears," he said slowly, "that the Academy owes humanity an apology. And much more than that." He turned to Daniel, who stood at the edge of the platform with tears running down his face. "Mr. Porter, please inform your people. Everything is about to change." 3 months passed after the demonstration in the amphitheater. In that time, the Academy changed more than it had in the previous 1,000 cycles. Director Valem established a new research department called the Division of Consciousness Studies. It was the first division in the Academy's history to be led by humans. Nathan Clark was appointed as its director, and Katie Morrison became his primary research lead. They were given funding, equipment, and access to resources that humans had never been allowed to touch before. News of the demonstration spread across the galaxy. Scientists from distant worlds requested permission to visit the Academy and study the human phenomenon. Media organizations ran stories about the primitive species that had turned out to be something extraordinary. Humanity became the most talked about subject in galactic civilization. Not everyone was happy about this change. A faction of conservative scholars had built their careers on the established order. They had spent centuries classifying species according to their capabilities and assigning each a place in the galactic hierarchy. Humans had been placed near the bottom, where they believed primitive newcomers belonged. Now that classification was being challenged, and some of them refused to accept it. A Synthery scientist named Brelith became the leader of this opposition. He argued that the demonstration had been faked somehow. He claimed that humans had used technology to deceive the observers. He demanded new tests with stricter controls and accused Nathan Clark of manipulating the results. Daniel Porter found himself caught in the middle of this conflict. As the human representative who had first brought the anomaly to light, he had become a symbol for both sides. Supporters saw him as the voice of a new era. Opponents viewed him as a threat to galactic stability. He tried to ignore the controversy and focus on his work. But the pressure was constant. Every day brought new arguments and accusations. Every meeting turned into a debate about whether humans deserved their new position or had somehow cheated to obtain it that one evening. Daniel walked through the Academy gardens trying to clear his mind. The alien plants glowed softly in the fading light, and the paths were quiet. He found a bench beside a small fountain and sat down with his head in his hands. "Difficult days," a voice said. Daniel looked up and saw Director Vilum standing nearby. The ancient Synthere's crystalline body reflected the colors of the sunset, creating patterns that shifted like living art. "Director," Daniel said, rising quickly to his feet. "I did not see you there." Vilum gestured for him to sit back down and moved to stand beside the fountain. "I come here often when I need to think. The water reminds me that even the most rigid structures can be shaped by persistent forces." Daniel settled back onto the bench. "Some of them will never accept us. No matter what we prove, no matter what we contribute. They have spent too long believing they were at the top." "Yes," Vilum agreed. "Change is difficult for long-lived species. We measure time in millennia, and we do not adapt quickly. Our beliefs become like stone, and breaking them requires great force. So what happens now?" Vilum's surface pulsed with soft light. "What always happens when old ideas fall? There will be conflict for a time. Resistance and anger and fear. But eventually, there will be acceptance. The truth cannot be hidden forever, and eventually, it always wins." He turned to face Daniel directly. "Your species has a saying, I believe. The arc of history bends toward justice." Daniel smiled despite his exhaustion. "We like to think so. We are not always right about that. Perhaps not. But consider what has happened here. The archive flagged an impossible error. Every system said that what occurred could not occur. But it was not an error at all. It was the first clear evidence that our understanding of the universe was incomplete. Humans taught us that. Whatever resistance you face now, that truth cannot be unlearned." In the months that followed, the Division of Consciousness Studies made discovery after discovery. Katie Morrison learned to project her awareness farther and with greater precision than anyone had thought possible. Other humans developed their abilities under her guidance. And soon there was a team of consciousness researchers working throughout the Academy. They found that humans could perceive dimensional disturbances that other species could only detect with equipment. They could navigate spatial anomalies by intuition alone. They could sense danger before instruments registered any threat. And they could communicate across vast distances using methods that defied conventional physics. Other species began to adapt to this new reality. The Varan developed technology that worked with human abilities, creating sensor systems of unprecedented precision. The Syntheri incorporated human consultants into their crystal growing processes and produced structures of impossible beauty and function. Even some of Brelith's former supporters found ways to benefit from human capabilities while quietly setting aside their objections. The division grew from a small team to a major research institution. Young humans arrived at the Academy, eager to develop their potential. Scientists from dozens of species applied to work alongside them. The boundaries between the established hierarchy and the new understanding began to blur. Katie Morrison stood in the lobby of the newly constructed Consciousness Research Center and watched the activity around her. Humans and aliens worked side by side on projects that would have been impossible a year ago. Screens displayed data about dimensional mapping and consciousness transfer and reality perception. The future had arrived faster than anyone expected. Nathan Clark came to stand beside her. He looked older than he had a few months ago, but his eyes were bright with satisfaction. "We were always told we arrived late to the galactic community," Katie said. "That we were the primitive ones who needed to catch up with everyone else. Turns out we were just working on a different level," Nathan replied. "They were building ships and stations and machines. We were building something else entirely." "What?" "Bridges. Between dimensions. Between minds. Between possibilities." He gestured at the busy room around them. "They spent 11,000 cycles mapping the physical universe. We are going to help them map everything else." The Academy archive continued to function as it always had, logging biosignatures and monitoring access points across the facility. But its parameters had been expanded now. It had been updated to account for phenomena that its original designers had never imagined. Deep in its records, the original error notification still existed. Unauthorized human pattern logged. Location: Restricted Sector Omega-7. But beside it now was a new classification that had been added to the system: Human Consciousness Projection. Dimensional variance confirmed. Authorized. The impossible had become routine. The error had become a feature. And humanity had finally found its true place among the stars. Not by climbing the existing ladder. Not by following the rules that others had written. But by revealing that reality itself was bigger than anyone had known. And this was only the beginning.